This isn't just another story. It's the kind that keeps you awake at 2 a.m., replaying every word you wish you'd said sooner. If something in this hits home, tell me in the comments. Stories like this deserve to be heard. Christmas dinner was almost over when my dad set his fork down, stared straight at me and said, "You're a burden, Hannah. You can't stay here anymore." For a second, I honestly thought I misheard him. My mom let out this shaky little laugh, like maybe he was joking. He didn't laugh. He just watched me, waiting for me to crack. The room went dead silent. My little sister Sophie stopped mid-bite, her fork hanging in the air like a question mark. I swallowed, set my fork on the plate, and felt every muscle coil tight. I'd paid for the lights. I'd paid for the heat. I'd stocked the fridge. Without me, this house would be cold and dark. And now, on Christmas night, they were pushing me out like I was nothing. I didn't trust my voice. If I spoke, I wasn't sure if I'd explode or fall apart. My dad leaned back like he'd just won something, like telling me off was a personal victory. "I've thought about this for a long time," he said, flat as a door. "You've overstayed. You're welcome. You need to move out." My mom shifted in her chair but didn't say a word in my defense. That silence hurt more than anything he said. "I'm 24. I have a stable job. I could have left ages ago. I didn't because they needed me. I've been paying the electric, the internet, most of the groceries. I'm the reason the heat works when the snow piles up." "You're not a burden," Sophie blurted. Her voice shook, almost a whisper, but it reached me. Dad shot her a look. "Stay out of it." Sophie glanced at me, eyes wide and scared. She's 16, still in high school. If they could toss me like that, what would they do to her? I took one slow breath, pressed down the fire in my chest, and said, "All right." Dad smirked like, my calm proved he was right. Mom stared at her mashed potatoes like they had the answers. I stood, took my plate to the sink, and didn't look back. Sophie still sat frozen, hands locked in her lap. I gave her a small nod, my silent way of saying, "I'm okay," even though I wasn't. I didn't stay to finish dinner. I went straight to my room and closed the door. My hands shook, but my mind was clear. If they wanted me gone, fine. But they had no idea what that actually meant. They would lose the bills I paid, the stability I carried, the piece of me that kept this house running, and I wasn't going to warn them. I pulled my suitcase from the closet and started packing. Downstairs, the voices bled through. Mom soft and unsure, Dad sharp and sure. An hour later, a light knock on my door. Sophie slipped inside and shut it fast. Her eyes were red. "What was that?" she whispered. "I don't know," I said, putting my laptop in my bag. "But I'm leaving tomorrow." "That's insane," she said. "You pay for everything. They can't afford groceries without you." "Not my problem anymore," I said, and the words tasted like metal. "Where will you go?" "I'll figure it out. I have some savings. Maybe stay with Claire until I get a place." Sophie hesitated. "Can I?" She stopped. I knew what she wanted. She wanted to come with me. "They'll never let you," I said gently. She stared at the floor. "Yeah." I zipped my suitcase. "You're going to be okay. Keep your head down." Her voice fell to a whisper. "You're going to regret this." I smiled without humor. "I know." I woke before sunrise. The house was still and cold, the kind of cold that lives in your bones. I moved quietly, not wanting another scene. I dragged my bags downstairs, each step groaning under the weight. I didn't look around. I didn't want to memorize the things I used to love. Outside, the air bit at my face. I loaded my car, shut the trunk like it was closing a chapter, and sat behind the wheel. Before I pulled out, I opened my banking app and began cutting cords one by one. Electric, internet, water, Netflix, all of it under my name. All of it canceled. Without me, they'd have about 3 weeks before the house went dark. I looked at the front door one last time and felt nothing. No sadness, no guilt, just relief. Seattle was 3 hours north. My best friend Claire lived in a cramped one-bedroom, But when I called her the night before, she didn't hesitate. When she opened the door, her smile was warm and real, something I hadn't seen in my parents' house in years. "Stay as long as you need," she said, pulling me into a hug. The couch sagged, her dog Charlie stared at me like I was a new toy, and her roommate kept asking if I planned to move in forever. None of it mattered. For the first time in forever, no one looked at me like I owed them. 3 days later, my phone lit up. 7 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, which shocked me. He never calls. A handful from Sophie. I ignored them until Sophie's last text popped up. "They're freaking out. The power's been cut." I couldn't help the grin that spread across my face. They'd really believed the bills paid themselves. Another text, "Dad's losing it. He says you did something to the house." I could practically see him stomping through the dark, cursing the dead Wi-Fi while Mom cried over the router. An hour later, Mom called again. This time I picked up. "Hannah," she said, voice shaky, "we don't know what happened. The power's out, the internet's down, the water bill—" "I didn't pay," I said. Silence. Then, softer, like she was realizing it for the first time, "You were paying those?" I almost laughed. "Who else did you think was?" She hesitated. "Your father said—" and stopped. I knew exactly what he said. That they'd be fine without me. That the house would run like magic even after I left. "Not my problem," I said, and ended the call. I thought that was the end. They'd figure it out. Maybe Dad would finally get a job. Maybe Mom would pick up more shifts. Maybe they'd sell something. I was wrong. It wasn't the end. It was the start. The next morning, 3 alerts from my bank. Suspicious login attempt. My stomach twisted. I opened my laptop. No money was gone yet, but attempt after attempt stacked in the log. Failed password resets, minutes apart. I didn't need a detective to guess. I called Sophie. She answered fast, whispering like she didn't want to be heard. "I was about to call you," she said. "Dad's been on the computer all morning, pounding the keys. He keeps yelling about money." I closed my eyes. "Is he looking for my old passwords?" She hesitated. "Yeah, remember Mom's little notebook by the desk? He's going through it." Of course. That old spiral notebook had every password I made as a teenager, back when I didn't know better. I forced a dry laugh. "Tell him he's wasting his time." "Hannah," Sophie's voice dropped. "He's saying you ruined us, that you did this on purpose, and I think he's going to do something stupid." My skin prickled. What does that mean? He's pacing, slamming doors. Mom's crying, but he's not listening. He keeps saying, "She's not getting away with this." My pulse thudded in my ears. I expected guilt trips. I expected begging, not revenge. "Lock your door," I said. "If anything happens, call me. Promise." I promise. I changed every password I had. Bank, email, streaming, shopping, everything. Then I called my bank. They locked my account so tight even I struggled to get in. By the time I re-accessed, the burn in my chest faded, but the unease stuck. I thought I'd cut clean. I thought I could walk away. But James, my father, wasn't going to let me go that easy. 3 nights later, the pounding started. Claire and I were half watching a trashy reality show when someone slammed on the apartment door so hard the picture frames rattled. Claire muted the TV. "Are you expecting someone?" "No," I said, stomach sinking. I already knew. Another bang, harder. Then his voice, deep and furious. "Hannah, open the door." Claire's eyes flew wide. "Is that your dad?" I stood, slowly, every muscle tight. I checked the peephole. There he was, James, fists clenched, breathing like a bull. "Hannah," he barked, "you think you can just walk away?" I stepped back from the door. "Should I call the cops?" Claire asked. "Yes," I said, no hesitation. My voice came out colder than I felt. She was already dialing when he slammed his fist again. "You owe us. You don't get to run off and leave us to starve. I stood back, phone in hand, while Claire gave the address. 2 minutes later, sirens hummed in the distance. The pounding stopped. Boots scuffed in the hall. Another knock, steady. Police. Open up. Claire let them in. 2 officers stepped past us and out into the hallway. Sir, step back, one said firmly. James turned, face flushed, chest heaving. She's my daughter. She thinks she can ruin us. Sir, you need to leave the property, the officer said. James looked over their shoulders and locked eyes with me. Pure hate. You did this. I didn't flinch. They cuffed him. Right there in the hallway. You'll regret this, Hannah, he shouted as they led him away. When the door closed, the quiet rang. Claire stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Holy crap, she whispered. That was intense. I let out a breath I'd been holding for days. It's not over. I was right. The next morning, as I made coffee, my phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. Mom's selling your stuff. The cup hovered in my hand. What stuff? Her reply was instant. Your laptop, your old camera, even your car. I laughed once, an empty sound. My car's here. Another text. No, it's not. It's in our driveway. 15 minutes later, I was on the highway back to Portland. I gripped the wheel so hard my fingers hurt. When I pulled up, my stomach dropped. My car was there. Driver's seat shoved back. Glove box yanked open. Gas tank almost dry. Before I could get out, the front door swung open. Patricia, my mother, stood there, arms crossed. You called the cops on your father, she snapped. You stole my car, I shot back. She scoffed. It was just sitting there, you weren't using it. It's my car, Mom. How did you even get it? Her eyes flicked sideways, just a flash, but enough to tell me she'd used the spare key I forgot she had. Give me the key, I said low. She didn't move. If you don't, I'll call the police, again. Her jaw tightened. She turned, disappeared, and came back a minute later. She threw the key at my chest. It fell into the grass. There, happy? No, I said, flat, and walked past her into the house. Sophie stood in the hallway, pale. She took your laptop, she whispered, and pawned it. I closed my eyes and counted to 3. When I opened them, my phone was already in my hand. Patricia's head snapped toward me. Don't you dare. Yes, I'd like to report stolen property, I told the dispatcher, staring at her as the color drained from her face. You can't do this to me. I'm your mother, she cried. You did this to yourself, I said. When the officers arrived, I gave them the receipt, Sophie's statement, and the exact pawn shop that had my laptop. They led Patricia out, in handcuffs while nosy neighbors stared through blinds. She was crying, yelling about being a struggling mom. I stood in the doorway and watched without a word. Sophie came beside me. This is really happening, isn't it? Yeah, I said quietly. It is. Before I got out of bed the next morning, my phone buzzed with a new number. 1 line. You're going to regret this. I stared for 10 seconds and knew. James. Someone bailed him out, probably an old drinking buddy or a distant relative who didn't know the whole story. I called Sophie. He's out, she said, voice tight. Mom's a mess. Crying 1 minute, screaming the next. And Dad, what about him? He said he's coming for you. I didn't waste time. Stay inside. Lock your door. Call me if anything changes. Then I drove straight to the house. The officers from the day before were still there, finishing paperwork on Patricia's arrest. Can I grab the rest of my things? I asked. One nodded. As long as your sister's okay with it. Sophie was already heading up the stairs. Let's be quick. We moved fast. Clothes, books, random pieces of my life I thought I'd come back for someday. Not anymore. I was carrying the last box to my car when headlights turned onto the street. A dark sedan rolled toward us. My chest tightened. James pulled into the driveway, slammed his door, and stalked toward me, that same bull-charge fury tight in his shoulders. I set the box down and held my ground. Come near me, I said, voice steady in the cold air, and I'll file a restraining order. His fists curled. You think you're better than us? I smiled, not because it was funny, but because it rattled him. I know I am. For a second, I thought he'd swing, right there in front of the cops. One officer stepped forward. Sir, you need to leave the property. James glared at me like he could set me on fire with his eyes. Then he turned, stomped back to the car, and peeled out, tires screaming. I loaded the last box and slammed the trunk. Sophie stood on the porch with her arms wrapped around herself. I don't want to stay here, she said softly. I know, I told her. 2 more years. You can do it. Her eyes watered, but she nodded. Call me when you get home. I got into my car. Patricia was still crying in the driveway, shouting my name like it could change anything. I didn't look back. As I pulled away, I knew this wasn't just the end of a fight. It was the end of us. I didn't stop driving until the city lights of Portland faded into a soft glow behind me. When I finally parked at Claire's, the exhaustion crashed over me. My hands trembled on the wheel. I carried the last box upstairs and stood there staring at it. Everything I owned, reduced to a few battered cardboard rectangles. And somehow, I felt lighter than I had in years. That night, I made it official. I blocked both my parents' numbers, deleted them from every social media account, changed my bank passwords again, updated my mailing address, set up a P.O. box so nothing accidentally found its way back to them. The next morning, I found a tiny studio for rent a few miles from Claire's. It was 1 room, a small kitchen, and a view of the alley. But it was mine. No shouting through thin walls, no slammed doors, no one standing over me demanding I fix their mess. Sophie called that night from her friend's phone. They're acting like nothing happened, she said, half disbelieving. Dad's pretending he never got arrested. Mom's telling people you just left on bad terms. Let them, I said. If it helps them sleep, let them lie. She went quiet. 2 more years, she whispered. You can do it, I said. And when you turn 18, I'll be there. After that, life became quiet. I unpacked slowly. The hum of the refrigerator filled the empty space. It didn't feel like home yet, but it felt safe. That was enough. 2 years can change everything. Sophie turned 18 last spring. The day after her birthday, she stuffed her clothes into 2 duffel bags, grabbed her hidden savings, and walked out. She stayed with a friend for the summer, then left for college in the fall. I helped her move in, found her a secondhand laptop, and hugged her until she laughed. You're free now, I told her. James and Patricia didn't land as softly. They lost the house within a year of me leaving. The bank took it when the payments stopped. They couldn't keep up without my help. Sophie told me they bounced. Between cheap rentals, burning through whatever goodwill they had with family and old friends. Eventually, they wound up in a rundown building in a part of town you don't walk at night. Over the years, they tried to reach me. An empty Facebook account, an envelope with no return address, a text from a number I didn't know. Can we talk? I never answered. I remember that Christmas night too clearly. Dad's voice didn't shake when he called me a burden. Mom stared at her plate instead of speaking up. They made their choice. I made mine. If this story hit deep, the next one will leave you speechless. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. And if this made you feel something, share it with someone who needs to hear the words. You don't owe anyone your peace.